All right, good afternoon. It's lovely to see a packed room this afternoon for this press briefing on the third meeting of states parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or TPNW in short. This meeting began today at UN headquarters and will take this entire week, ending on Friday, March 7th. And before I introduce our distinguished panelists who you'll be hearing from today, allow me just to say a few words on the treaty and on the meeting of states parties. As I'm sure many of you know, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was adopted on the 7th of July 2017 here at the United Nations headquarters, and it entered into force in January of 2021. And the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called the treaty an important step towards the goal of a world free of nuclear weapons and a strong demonstration of support for multilateral approaches to nuclear disarmament. Well, this third meeting of states parties, again taking place this week, will hold a thematic debate on the risks for humanity of nuclear conflict and its devastating humanitarian consequences. And states parties will also, amongst others, consider the status and the operation of the treaty, addressing issues related to its universality, the total elimination of nuclear weapons, victim assistance, and security concerns. And we have an esteemed panel with us today who will talk you through what the third meeting of state parties will be discussing this week, and what their expectations are, and what they anticipate the outcome of this week's meeting to be. I'll introduce them all briefly, and they will be speaking to you one by one, delivering very brief remarks, after which we'll open the floor for any comments and questions that you might have here in the room, and also for those of us joining online. We have with us the president of the third meeting of states parties to the TPNW, Ambassador Akan Rakhmetullin, who is the first Deputy Foreign Minister of Kazakhstan. We are also joined at the far left, to your right, by Ms. Melissa Parke, who is the Executive Director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. Also with us today is Ms. Eirini Giorgiou, who is the Legal Advisor of the International Committee of the Red Cross. And we're joined by Ms. Taraem Taukaro of Kiribati, who is a representative of affected community. As I mentioned, each of our panelists will deliver very brief remarks, after which we'll open the floor for questions. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, it's really a great honor and pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And today, the very first day of the third meeting of the state parties to the TPNW, to which we pay very particular attention and hope that it will be another very good opportunity for all participating states, for NGOs, for other stakeholders to exchange their views, to compare notes of what we have attained, and to identify ways forward towards the review conference. And it's an honor for me, as being the representative of Kazakhstan and the country which used to be the nuclear state, the part of the Soviet Union. Then it got rid of its nuclear arsenal, nuclear infrastructure, and still having some issues with the negative consequences of nuclear tests. To represent my country, the bigger region, at this conference, and this gives us special responsibility and special opportunity to move forward the process. And of course, I just wanted to stress upon the input this process received from the first and second MSP conferences, respectively in Vienna and here in New York, chaired by Austria and Mexico last year. And I hope that the exchange of views will be very constructive and really result-oriented. We are now working on the final documents, on final declaration, on the decisions on various aspects, on various facets of our process. And I just wanted to refer to the very good example of 4 new ratifications that has taken place recently, namely Indonesia, Tome and Principe, Sierra Leone, and the Solomon Islands. And we believe that the TPNW, with all its diverse stakeholders, as I said, official delegations, non-governmental organizations, international non-governmental organizations, will give very strong signal to the international community in our way towards denuclearization, towards the world free of nuclear weapons. And we have to work on the, according to the structure of the treaty on the universalization, to emphasize the critical need for broader participation and ratification to increase the number of those who ratified and joined the treaty. And of course, where Kazakhstan and Kiribati are very active in trying to find out the way to solve the issue of affected communities. We call it the working group on victims assistance and environment remediation, and we very much look forward that the certain decision will be adopted upon the completion of this conference. So, dear colleagues, this is in brief what we expect from the conference, and I remain open for any of your questions you may have. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rakhmetullin, for outlining your expectations for the week ahead. It's my distinct pleasure now to give the floor to Ms. Melissa Parke, who is the Executive Director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here. Hi, everyone. I want to firstly thank President Rakhmetullin of Kazakhstan for his outstanding leadership of this important meeting, which is taking place during the 80th anniversary year of the US atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the 80th anniversary year of the first nuclear weapons test, Trinity, which has been followed by more than 2,000 nuclear weapons tests around the world, and the 80th anniversary year of the creation of the United Nations, whose first resolution was for the elimination of nuclear weapons. There are 5 key messages that ICAN is emphasising at this third meeting of the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. 1. So long as any country has nuclear weapons and insists they are essential for their security, others will want them. The continued failure of possessor states to advance disarmament will only lead to further proliferation. 2. So long as any country retains nuclear weapons, they are bound one day to be used, by accident or design. Thus, the only way to eliminate the risk of their use is to eliminate the weapons themselves. 3. Any such use would be utterly catastrophic for life on this planet, as highlighted by the incontrovertible evidence from Hiroshima and Nagasaki and from the more than 2,000 nuclear weapons tests carried out around the world, mainly on colonised and indigenous peoples. This treaty provides the only international framework for addressing these harms to people and the environment, and for ensuring that they never happen again. 4. As TPNW states parties have made clear, the promotion and reliance of nuclear deterrence poses an existential security risk for all countries and all peoples. Nuclear weapons are the only devices ever created that have the capacity to destroy all complex life on Earth. They are therefore everyone's business, and not just the narrow national security concern of nuclear-armed states and nuclear complicit states. And 5, disarmament is eminently achievable. In fact, of all the global challenges we face, this is the least complex. Humans built nuclear weapons. Humans can dismantle them. All it requires is political will and leadership. And at present, that leadership is coming from TPNW states, parties, civil society, communities impacted by nuclear weapons use and testing, and from parliamentarians, scientists, artists, cities, and investors who are taking their money out of nuclear weapons and putting them into more constructive uses. This treaty, this meeting of states parties, is the only place where you will actually see action happening on nuclear disarmament. Half the world has joined this treaty already. A global majority of nations support this treaty and have gathered here to be part of the solution, not the problem, along with 1,000 people from civil society who are registered at this conference. This is democratising the nuclear weapons debate. It's bringing it out of the hands of the Permanent Five of the Security Council, all nuclear armed states, and into the General Assembly, where every country has an equal vote. It's an evidence-based approach that believes policy decisions regarding nuclear weapons should be based on the available scientific facts on the consequences and risks of nuclear weapons, rather than on the uncertain security benefits of nuclear deterrence. A growing body of scientific research is showing that peoples of all states and anywhere on Earth are at considerable risk of becoming collateral damage from nuclear conflict or nuclear explosions. The security of all of humanity is diminished by the continued possession of and reliance on nuclear weapons by nuclear-armed and nuclear complicit states. We expect this meeting will strongly condemn nuclear deterrence, nuclear weapons modernisation and nuclear threats, and will expose the fallacy of a limited nuclear war. As nuclear war exercises like Proud Prophet and others have shown time and again, and as demonstrated so brilliantly in Annie Jacobson's best-selling book, Nuclear War, A Scenario, there is no such thing as a limited nuclear war, because any use of nuclear weapons leads almost automatically to annihilation. From an escalatory exchange. Annie Jacobson and Professor Zia Mian, the co-chair of the TPNW Scientific Advisory Group, will be part of the second thematic panel of the meeting tomorrow morning on the true costs of nuclear war. So I urge everyone to listen to that. Our focus must remain on elimination and not simply on extending the period of non-use of nuclear weapons. And we must insist that elimination be pursued not as a distant dream, but an urgent necessity. Without action soon, a nuclear catastrophe is all but inevitable. And as John F. Kennedy famously warned in this very building in 1961, the weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us. Martin Luther King Jr. also talked about the fierce urgency of now, and that there is such a thing as being too late. More than 6 decades on, it is clear our time is running out, the doomsday clock is ticking, and the TPNW is the only plan to save the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clark, for reminding us what is at stake. I will now hand the floor to our third speaker of today, who is Ms. Eirini Giorgiou, the legal advisor of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Ms. Giorgiou, you have the floor.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. As Melissa said, this year marks the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings that targeted Hiroshima and Nagasaki, taking the lives of over 400,000 people, and that's a conservative estimate. The International Committee of the Red Cross and the Japanese Red Cross Society witnessed firsthand this unprecedented tragedy as they tried in near impossible conditions to assist the dying and injured. And since 1945, the ICRC and the entire International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement have been calling for the prohibition and complete elimination of nuclear weapons in the interest of humanity. Today, nuclear weapons continue to cast a deep shadow over a common future. The risk that they are used deliberately or inadvertently has grown exponentially. It's fueled by ongoing conflicts, strident nuclear rhetoric, and various technological developments. As international community, we have a duty to prevent the unspeakable from happening again. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is a response to this urgent imperative. It prohibits nuclear weapons as a necessary step towards their elimination and provides a realistic roadmap for getting there. While nuclear deterrence theories are regaining vigor and appeal despite their tremendous risks and unproved benefits, the TPNW's momentum is far from shrinking. It is growing. More than half of the world's states have expressed their will to be bound by the treaty and have subscribed to its vision for a just and peaceful future without nuclear weapons. We call on all remaining states to follow suit. We commend states parties and the presidencies to the TPNW meetings for their steadfast commitment and efforts to implement the treaty's wide-reaching provisions fully and effectively, and we commend them for continuing to advocate in words and in action for urgent progress towards nuclear disarmament. Since their creation, the use and testing of nuclear weapons has gravely affected and continues to affect entire communities and large areas in many parts of the globe. Mitigating the tremendous harm caused by nuclear weapons use and testing is an important element of achieving a nuclear weapon-free world, and the TPNW seeks to do so by establishing robust obligations on victim assistance and environmental remediation. Nuclear weapons defy every tenet of law, ethics, and humanity. Any use, be it strategic or tactical, offensive or defensive, would entail the risk of escalation to nuclear war, endangering the very survival of life on our planet. It is extremely doubtful that nuclear weapons could ever be used in compliance with international humanitarian law, which puts limits on how wars are fought, and any use or threat of use of nuclear weapons would be abhorrent to the principles of humanity and the dictates of public conscience. Speaking of threats, despite the growing body of evidence on the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons, threatening to use them has become commonplace. Such threats fuel tensions, trigger an arms race, and increase the risk of actual use, eroding the nuclear taboo. So we call on all states to refrain from nuclear threats and to condemn them consistently and unequivocally. At the third meeting of states parties, which began today, important decisions will be taken to strengthen the impact of the treaty. This brings us one step closer to nuclear disarmament, although the road ahead is still long. We appreciate the role states parties have entrusted the ICRC with, within the bodies and mechanisms established to facilitate the implementation of the treaty. From our side, we will continue working with states parties, as well as other states that are today outside the TPNW, to achieve the treaty's humanitarian objectives until a nuclear weapon-free world becomes a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Giorgiou, for the perspective of the ICRC. That brings us to our final speaker on the panel today, and I'm very pleased to hand the floor to Ms. Taraem Taukaro of Kiribati, who is with us here today representing affected communities. You have the floor.
Excellencies, esteemed friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you all the warm greetings from Kiribati. My name is Taraem Taukaro, and I come from Christmas Island in the Republic of Kiribati. I am a married woman with 2 beautiful daughters. I am here today thanks to the support of the government of Kiribati, the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation and its youth initiative reversed the trend. As a third-generation victim of the nuclear test conducted on Christmas Island by the British government in 1957 and 1958, followed by American test in 1962, I feel honored to participate in this press conference alongside distinguished speakers. I am sincerely grateful for the opportunity to share our perspectives and stories regarding the humanitarian impacts, the significance of nuclear justice, and Articles 6 and 7. Nuclear tests have left indelible and horrifying memories for victims everywhere they occurred. My mother was only 2 years old when the first British bomb was tested on Christmas, and 7 when the last American bomb was detonated. Her father was relocated from their home island in the southern part of Kiribati to work on a coconut plantation in Christmas Island in 1955. Within a year of their arrival, the nuclear test commenced and continued for 6 years, profoundly impacting our lives. My family endured the same trauma experienced by the 187 other families living on Christmas Island during the nuclear test. As my mother has recounted, the local people were instructed to walk from their homes to the wharf around midnight to board the Narvik, a British ship anchored near the island. From the ship, they heard the thunderous explosions outside when the bombs detonated. There were also times when they gathered at the old London tennis court, where they experienced the bomb blast, saw blinding flashes of lights, and felt the intense heat even while huddled under blankets, despite the bombs being detonated miles away on the southeast side of the island. Though these tests were conducted 68 years ago, their detrimental effects persist, particularly concerning our health. My mother has suffered from gum bleeding. My older sister was born deaf, and I experienced unexplained fainting spells during my teenage years. Many other families have faced various types of cancer, including cervical and breast cancer. My colleague, Oima Johnson, who is also part of the Kiribati youth delegation at this third MSB, suffers from frequent headaches, and some of her family members have tragically lost their lives due to these health issues. I firmly believe that we, the victims of nuclear tests, deserve nuclear justice, and the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons embodies that hope. I trust that the deliberations and discussions surrounding Articles 6 and 7, as well as the outcomes of this TPNW meeting of the state parties, will yield positive news that I can share with my family and the members of the Victims Association back in Kiribati. Thank you very much. Kamdaba.
Thank you so very much for sharing that with us, your experience and that of your family dating back all those years and of the devastating impacts of nuclear testing. This concludes the panel portion for the press briefing. I am happy to open up the floor for any questions from members of the media. I would ask you just to raise your hand, and when given the floor, if you could please state your name, the outlet that you're with, and if you could please identify whom of our panelists you would like to pose your question to, please. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for today's briefing. I'm Ayano Yamakoshi from Japanese newswire Digipress. My question is about Japan for Mr. Ambassador. And even though Japan is only country have experienced the atomic bombs, but unfortunately, the Japanese government decided not to participate at this meeting this time. So what's your thought on that decision? And do you have any comment or message to Japanese government? Yes, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. You know, actually, I'm not in a position to comment. It's purely, sovereign decision by your government, and we know the actual reason why Japan is not part of the TPNW. And whenever I meet with my Japanese colleagues from the foreign ministry or from the different missions, we discuss the perspective of Japan to be part of the treaty. Of course, much depends on the geopolitical context in your region, and it's not very conducive, to be just to remove from the status of the country being protected by some allies due to the regional context, and to become the part of the TPNW. But again, it's an entirely sovereign decision by the Japanese government. But I'm really happy that here we have quite a lot, great number of Japanese NGOs whom I meet quite regularly, and always we deliver our message to convey it to the government to consider, to activize, to make more active Japanese participation in the process, to be at least, as an observer first, and then we can see how the process would evolve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I see that Melissa would like to follow up as well. Please, Ms. Clark.
Thank you for the question. I'm not constrained by diplomatic niceties. So I can say how extremely disappointing it is that Japan decided not to participate in this meeting, even as an observer. Japan would have a lot of very valuable information and perspectives to contribute to this meeting, especially on victim assistance and environmental remediation, among other things. And it is very disappointing that the government did not listen to the hibakusha, did not take account of what was presented at the conference in February in Japan. The Japan campaign to abolish nuclear weapons had people coming from all over Japan and the world to talk about the necessity for Japan to join the TPNW, and at the very least to observe it. And the government decided not to. I think that is very unfortunate, given that the Japanese people really support this treaty. The Japanese people really want the words of Nihon Hidankyo and other hibakusha to be listened to. And I hope that in time Japan the government will come to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. I have two questions, Mr. Deputy Foreign Minister. One for you and the second for anyone in the panel. The first, when Kazakhstan decided to get rid of its nuclear arsenal, it was a moment in history of hope, and people were thinking that this is a peace dividends and things will fall that conflict during the Cold War. And if we look at the situation now, there are many conflicts. NATO has expanded. Warsaw Pact disappeared. Does your government regret taking into account what's going on of conflict now in Ukraine, in many parts, in Georgia, in Bosnia-Herzegovina, in Europe, in Kosovo, many other places? Does your government regret that they took that decision to get rid of its nuclear arsenal? And my second question, Iran is a member of NPT. And they're trying, as they say, to acquire nuclear weapons, but the whole world is lining against that attempt, which they say didn't get nuclear weapons. However, another country, it has been proven beyond any doubt, it's a nuclear state, which is Israel. Why people don't talk about it? Why don't you have the international community has the guts to talk about the arsenal, the nuclear arsenal of the state of Israel, which is not a member of NPT. They only keep chasing Iran, but quiet and silent when it comes to Israel. Thank you.
Thank you. And you would like to answer with both questions, right? Or, as you said, first question me, and second is yeah. Yeah, I will be very short answering the first question, because our government has never regretted about giving away its nuclear arsenal, because it is the only vital and the only right decision And even we can see the nowadays, negative developments, regional or global. But, having that kind of, nuclear weapon does not give any kind of guarantee. And on the contrary, once we, gave away our nuclear arsenal, our nuclear infrastructure, it just proven our, eagerness to be the responsible, full-fledged member of the international community. And it was, as I said, the only viable and only right decision. We feel protected, even we don't have nuclear weapon, because we are friends with everyone when we enemy to none, because we have very good relations, being in the heart of Central Asia, in that region. We have two countries from the nuclear club, Russia and China, being our great neighbors, but we still feel very comfortable because we have quite centuries-long history of our peaceful coexistence and mutual re-enrichment, and so we never regretted about that. And I remember I was a young diplomat at that time, and when the decision was taken to abolish the nuclear weapon in Kazakhstan, we received some calls from some countries asking not to get rid of that, keep it that as it would be a kind of Muslim stick or Islamic stick, nuclear stick. But our decision was just absolutely unequivocal, just to get rid of that. Otherwise, I mean, on the contrary, it would endanger the very existence of our country and the entire region. Answering your second question, yes, you're right. Israel is not part of the NPT, and Iran is. And I chair the second preparatory committee for the NPT review process. I wouldn't say that they were only, some acquisition of Iran, but it's a mutual process. Every country, every participating state of the NPT, they are entitled to speak of whatever concern they have towards any issue, and it is just pure reflection of the political divide and political connotation on the stance of every country, and it is, of course, it's a great pity that that political discrepancies, some being not able to listen to each other and to understand each other, is being brought to that kind of discussions, and some countries who are persuading their own maybe political agenda or their political interests, they may try to push or to use that kind of instrument to make a pressure on some certain state. This is how we see that, because so I wouldn't say that it was the entire pressure on Iran. It was kind of mutual exchange of some remarks, because Iran was pressed by some countries, but at the same time Iran easily and freely used its right of reply and making the general statement to express their concern, what they have towards some other delegations. And it's really very frustrating, but this is so how it is now for the time being. And we believe that this 3MSP would be kind of some kind of complementary to the entire process of not only getting rid or denuclearize the world, but also to create the atmosphere of trust and confidence and mutual understanding. I'm not sure if other colleagues from the yes, Melissa, I think you have your own vision.
Thank you. Well, the TPNW is not a treaty that's aimed at any particular country. It's aimed at the nuclear weapons themselves. So in the view of those who support the treaty, there are no right hands for wrong weapons, as former Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, said. We urge all nuclear armed states to engage with the treaty and to eliminate their weapons. In terms of Israel, ICAN has issued a discussion paper on Israel's nuclear weapons, and saying that, I mean, there have been nuclear threats made in the context of that conflict. And we have made recommendations to the effect that any peace agreement must also encompass Israel's nuclear weapons, because that will be an ongoing issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rakhmetullin and Ms. Parke, for your A couple more questions. You were in the back first. Yes, please.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Ruio Kiyomiya from the Asahi Shimbun, Japanese daily newspaper. I have two quick questions to either Mr. Ambassador or Ms. Melissa Parke. First, could you please confirm which countries joined the third meeting as observers? And secondly, many countries under the nuclear umbrella have not signed the treaty. And what do you think of the significance of the participation as observers?
Could you repeat the second part about the observers?
So what do you think of the significance of the participation as observers, considering the fact that many countries under the U.S. nuclear umbrella haven't signed the treaty? Thank you.
Would you answer that? Yeah, I actually, to the first part of your question, I am not aware how many observer countries, countries not signatories or not party to the treaty are participating as an observer, but we see the participation of, umbrella countries, because it's, as I said, the umbrella, being the umbrella country as we call it, it's not quite a good thing. But this is the real reflection of the things we have in different parts of our world. Countries are not feeling comfortable, not feeling safe and secure from some certain threats, and that's why they are being part of that umbrella system. But if they attend as the observer to the MSP, that would be, quite strong. It would give quite strong signal. First, to their nations, to their population. Second, it would give quite strong signal to the entire international community that this country is not like positioning itself like being apart from this process, but it's on a way to understand what's going on, just to increase its awareness and to maybe to learn some lessons from the MSP, and then at some certain stage it may become a kind of turning point for them, just to change their mind. It's a kind of combination of different aspects: threat from outside, and at the same time raised increase of mutual understanding, the dialogue. So we would be very much happy, I think, if we have more umbrella states, so-called umbrella states, being part of this TPNW. This is the observers. Melissa, that.
Yeah, this treaty is an investment in multilateralism and international law at a time when these things are increasingly under threat. And it's important for countries, even if they're not ready to sign the treaty, that they come along and be part of that process and support that process. And there are a number of countries that are not yet prepared to sign the treaty who are very interested in aspects of the treaty, for example, the victim assistance and environmental remediation measures, and who have expertise and who have willingness to engage on those issues. So I think observing is it's a useful and it's an important aspect, but ultimately we want every country to join this treaty, to join with the global majority, because the countries that don't have nuclear weapons and don't want nuclear weapons, don't want anything to do with them, is the global majority. It's a very small minority of countries who are holding the rest of the world hostage, in effect, with weapons of not just mass destruction but total destruction. So we urge countries that are not yet observing to please observe as a means of getting towards joining. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you for your briefing. My name is Yu from Kyodo News, another Japanese news agency. I have two follow-up questions to Mr. President, Kazakh Ambassador. So one is about observer. So are there any NATO member countries attending this third conference as an observer? That's the first question. And then secondly, so how do you make progress for nuclear disarmament without P5 and then mainly all of the NATO country? I'm not sure about the NATO country and Japan. So how do you make progress for disarmament? And do you think a world is divided between member of TPNW and others? So thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to be short. I think I'm not sure if any NATO countries are here as an observer, but I know that there are some NATO countries that are part of the TPNW. We have from Europe, we have Austria, we have Ireland being part of the TPNW. Actually, if you could repeat your second question, about the NATO, the division in.
How do you make
No, I can hear you.
So how do you make progress for nuclear disarmament without P5 and Japan, NATO country? And then one must, do you think a world is divided between TPNW and others?
No, I don't think it's divided. And of course, TPNW, when it was created and it was signed and evolved, that P5 countries were against it, and they are still, because their notion is that this treaty is kind of undermining the very existence of them, of the nuclear states, which is prescribed in the NPT treaty, Non-Proliferation Treaty. But I wouldn't say that the world is divided, because even the nuclear states, they are not part of the TPNW, neither participating state nor observer, but they still observe, they still follow discussions. I'm pretty sure that they are quite well aware of what's going on here. And speaking about others who are not signatories or ratified the treaty, they are interested, in keeping the dialogue moving on. They are interested in disarmament being, real and practical. But it's just political, context that prevents them to be the part of this activities, not the part of the treaty, but the part of this activity, the global activities, aimed at global disarmament, non-proliferation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Clark. We'll hand it over to you, but if you allow me just to excuse Ambassador Rakhmetullin, who is indeed required to go back to the room where the afternoon session of the TPNW third meeting of states parties will resume. We thank you so much. Yes, we will let you go shortly. I will let Ms. Clark respond, and then I'll excuse the panel with regrets to those of you who have questions. Please note that the panelists are all in the building this week, so should you have any further follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Ms. Clark, over to you.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the NATO countries, because that situation seems to be changing. It's very fluid. But certainly my own home country of Australia is observing. Not only that, but we have 27 parliamentarians from 17 different countries who are part of this meeting of states parties here today, including some 7 MPs from Japan. There's MPs from all of them from nuclear weapons states or nuclear umbrella states, and that's really significant. There is a growing movement of parliamentarians in support of this treaty. Not only parliamentarians, but also cities. It's because cities are the primary targets of nuclear weapons. We're seeing major cities around the world joining up to this treaty and joining up to support for this treaty, to urge their national governments to join the treaty. So big cities like New York, Washington DC, Rome, Paris, all the major ones, and that's a big sign to their countries that populations within those countries are interested and they're concerned. And we're also seeing investment in nuclear weapons going down year on year ever since this treaty came into force. So it's having an impact, even if at the very leadership level they haven't quite got the message yet, but they will. Their populations are moving on this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clark. I do see many of your hands up still, which is very heartening. It's good to know there's a lot of interest in this topic. I am mindful that we are pressed for time since many of our panelists, the ambassador has already left, but many of our panelists are required to go back into the room. So with apologies, we will wrap up this press briefing this afternoon. Like I mentioned, our panelists are in New York this week, so should you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Allow me to express again my sincere thanks to our panelists for your time and presence here today, and to all of you in the room for your interest. I wish you a good afternoon.